Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Eavesdrop In. I'm Seth.
I'm Fey.
And today we've invited a friend, Jen, to come in and talk with us because she's had some little harrowing, interesting experiences this week, and it's springboarded us into a discussion about ghosts and things that we love to talk about. So I'm going to turn this over to Jen and let her tell you about her experience this week, and we're going to do some exploration. So go ahead, Jen.
Okay. This week I've always been able to sense ghosts and things around, but I have never had a actual move the cup experience or anything like that. So I've only seen those on television. But this week I woke up about 7:30. I was laying in bed playing on my phone, so I'd been awake, and about an hour later or so I was laying there, and all of a sudden I heard this buzz, 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 and it sounded like a phone that had been set on some loose papers, so it made it amplify and rattle really loud.
Now, was this in your room or was this in another room?
I'm in my bed. I heard it out. It seemed like coming from the kitchen, which is right outside my bedroom. And when that sound happened, I've got 3 cats. 2 of them sat up and looked, were like startled and sat up and looked at where the sound was coming from. And so I sat up and I was like, what the heck? So my kids and I have been playing pranks on each other. And so honestly, I thought it was a prank. And so I got up and I went outside my door, and we have this giant Jason Momoa that we stick around the house all the time because he's my husband, and that's the only way I can have that. And and so my kids had stuck it right outside my door, thinking it was going to scare me when I got up the morning. And so that's what led me into thinking that I was being pranked. So I got up and I started investigating what was that buzz, and I couldn't find anything. And then I heard some talking. And it sounded like my son, he's 18. It sounded like him and his girlfriend. And I thought, well, she's gotten over to the house pretty early this morning, which is not necessarily unusual, but I thought they were just sitting in their room talking. And so I headed back to his room and my other son's room. And I keep hearing this talking, and it's a two-way conversation. It's they're both talking, and there was no doubt in my mind or anything that it was them, because it was my son's voice. And so I walk into his room, and of course it's pitch black. The fan is still on. The dog is still laying on the bed, and he gets up and he looks one-eyed, and he's like, and lays back down. I was like, okay, that was not him. So I went across the hall to my other son's room, and I thought maybe he was on the computer talking to somebody. And I went in, and he was sound asleep. I was like, well, I heard that. What are they doing? So I came back into the rest of the house and started investigating, where that sound came from and maybe who was talking or whatever. So I'm walking around the house looking, and as I come out to my sunroom and then start turning around and go back to the rest of the house, my couch faces away from me in my living room, and I saw somebody lay down on the couch. Again, not unusual, because my son is cooking a pizza, and that fire alarm means it's ready. And
I was like, oh, this is getting really live here.
Yeah, that fire alarm means the pizza's ready. Anyways,
alrighty then.
So I saw this person lay down on my couch, and I was like, again, not unusual because my son will sometimes have people come over to the house, and spend the night, and they'll sleep on the couch. So, um, and that's my little one.
Yeah.
Anyways, okay, cat came in. And so I go over to the couch and I think, okay, I've got this whole thing solved in my head, that their phone went off. It was the buzzing, it was whatever. So I go over to the couch and nobody's there. And I'm like, okay, somebody is messing with me. They are messing with me and they have really got me this time. So I go into my older son's room again and I bust up in there and I'm like, what are you doing? And he looks at me and he's like, what are you talking about? And I said, who are you talking to? What are you talking about? And he's like, Mom, what are you talking about? And I said, this is not funny anymore. You have made these noises. I said, I don't know how you're doing this. I said, but it's not funny anymore. And I said, what are you doing? And he's like, Mom, you're scaring me. I don't know what you're talking about. I said, so he gets up and he puts on his glasses and he's like, Mom, really, what are you talking about? And so we go in and we start investigating and stuff. And I tell him what had happened and all. And he's like, of course, he just thinks I'm a weirdo, but we're looking all over the house trying to find what in the world that could have made those sounds and noises and the voices and the whole thing. So, anyways, we didn't find anything. Even to this day, I'm still looking around. And so a couple days later, I had gotten up again and come out here to the sunroom and went back to my bedroom a few minutes later, and I have these posters that they're styrofoam posters so they can stand up on their own. And I don't know why they've been in my room for 120 years for whatever reason. They've just been leaning up against the wall collecting dust, and they've been there forever. And so I've never really paid attention to them. And then as I came back around to go back into my room, these posters were standing up on their end on in the doorway of my room. And I went, it's such a blatant thing that, there's got to be a logical explanation for this. The kids had gotten up, there's no way, the way it was sitting and all that, it couldn't have been any kind of gust of wind or anything like that. Somebody had to have moved them from where they were and put them in the doorway.
And they had moved around a corner or something. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Kind of
Yeah,
moved
because I
around.
remember seeing the picture that you had put up, and it was
If
like
you wanna-
it looked like
if
they
you
were
could
here
show
one
me.
time and then around the next time.
But so I went directly to my kids' rooms, and both of them were still sound asleep on this day. They hadn't even turned over yet. And so at that time, I knew neither one of them had been up or anything because I had literally, it had been less than 5 minutes. I want to just say 2 or 3 minutes since I'd been in that room. So
Right.
I hadn't been that long. Um, so that was the other weird thing. And then Grant told me, my oldest, told me that he last night that Landon came in and said that he heard somebody screaming, and it was before this had happened. And he said, I heard somebody screaming, and he said, where's Mom? I can't find her. And I had gone to something or the other for a little bit. And Grant was like, I don't think you heard screaming. And then all this started happening. And then the last thing, and again, this is new because he just told me last night, he said that he had gotten up after we had gone to bed. Little brother and I had gone to bed and stuff, and about in the middle of the night or whatever. And he had gotten up, go to the kitchen to find a snack or whatever. And he said when he went into the living room area, he said the feeling just completely changed. Everything was fun and happy and whatever, never thought of another thing. And then all of a sudden it just felt like this something was just like pissed off. And just like, why are you here? And he stopped and it froze him in his tracks. He was on his phone with his girlfriend at the time and it stopped him in his tracks. And he looked around and of course, it's dark in the house. And he goes ahead and goes to the refrigerator and kind of ignores it and thinks, okay, I'm just whatever. And he stands and looks in the refrigerator for a minute and he says that he got this feeling that somebody was standing and he went over to in the living room where he thought something was standing. And he said it felt like it was just standing there and it was going like it was just, he said, not like mad as in I'm fixing to hurt you mad, but more of like I don't want you in here because you've interrupted something or whatever, or you should be in your room or whatever. But he said he said he never saw anything, but it just really freaked him out. And he said that it just felt so, oppressive kind of thing. And he didn't feel threatened, but he didn't like it. And so he fiddled around and got whatever he wanted and from the refrigerator, and he was on the phone with his girlfriend and was telling her about it. And when he went back in his room and shut the door, he said everything felt fine again. He didn't feel, he said later he felt that it was closer to him, like closer to his door in his room, but it never like came into his room or anything. And so he said he felt like it almost like you walked in on a burglar kind of thing, kind of like you walked in. That's kind of the feeling. So he just told me that last night because, we were talking about all this. So, but other than that, we haven't seen or heard anything else so far.
How long have you been living in this house?
5.5 years.
Okay, so you've had quite a lot of time, and there's been nothing up until this recent spate of things. Is that correct?
Well, when we first got here, I think there was a negative entity. Like, I think it was something demonic. That he,
Excuse
you okay?
me, I'm sorry.
I think there was something demonic here when we first got here because we all felt really uneasy. And of course, at the time, I was going through a divorce, and so I just chalked it up to, me living by myself for the first time in my life and living out in the country and all that stuff. But I kept getting this really bad feeling. And so one night, I went to the window and I looked outside, and I saw this black entity outside, and it was like it had gotten up off of a chair or something and just slunk behind a tree. And it wasn't like I saw it out of the corner of my eye. I mean, I saw this thing straight on.
Dead on, right.
I had turned on the lights and stuff, and it was like I kind of scared it and went behind a tree. And so I actually talked to my preacher's wife about it, and she gave me some anointing oil, and I blessed the house and anointed the doorpost and things. And after that, I had no other problems in the house whatsoever. And we've always got one that we call Fred.
It sounds like it's time for an oil change.
Yeah. That's kind of what we were talking about. So yeah, we're thinking. But I've always felt like things around, but nothing that I've ever seen before, or any physical evidence of anything before until now.
And you've not had in any other places that you've lived anything like this happening, is that correct?
Oh no, we've had ghosts around. Ever since I got married, we have had ghosts around. My ex-husband and I were still real friendly and on good terms and stuff. And we were actually talking about this the other day, and how things that we had experienced, together. He said now after we after we divorced and he's lived on his own, he's never experienced anything. He hasn't ever experienced anything else. And I think Roy and I've kind of talked before, I've talked to other people, is that I'm kind of like I don't know, a magnet for these things. They kind of see me and they just kind of like, ooh, something shiny, and they come towards me kind of thing.
Out of
So,
curiosity, did someone pass away or something about the time you and your husband got together? Someone close to you or whatever?
mm,
Okay.
no, now we did have a significant death, you know.
But that was after the ghost thing started, right?
Yes, yes. It kind of made it even more. Remember yesterday I told you about Roy about, excuse me, Seth. Should I?
That's fine.
It doesn't matter.
Okay,
I'm
sorry.
Roy Seth. They all know.
Okay, and
I'm out of my Roy closet.
And into the Seth closet.
Anyways, he said my ex-husband was reminding me when I was pregnant with twins, and we knew one of them wasn't going to make it the whole pregnancy, just about. And so, anyways, and the reason why I say that is because he reminded me the other day that he saw an angel while I was pregnant, and we were going through this it was really traumatizing experience, having one twin we knew was going to live and the other one wouldn't, kind of thing. And he woke up one night, had fallen asleep on the couch, and woke up, and there was a very bright lighted person standing in front of him, and he saw it for a moment and blinked and kind of shook his head and it went away, but he said the feeling didn't go away. And he spoke to this, he swears it was an angel, and it said, you weren't supposed to see me. And but he asked a couple questions about Emily and about the twin and stuff. And
Emily was, I'm sorry, Emily was the name of the twin that didn't survive?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So, anyways, he actually spoke to this angel, and nothing has ever happened like that to him before. And I've never been able to speak to a spirit or anything before that, but I'd forgotten that had happened. That happened about 11 years ago. And he said he could speak to this thing in his mind. He didn't have to say words out loud and stuff. And said that, and he asked, why are you here? And they said, we're watching you and giving you comfort during this time. And he asked questions about Emily, and the spirit said, it's not time for you to know those things yet. And so it did, and he never saw it again. Had never had anything like that happen before. So we've had paranormal stuff happen to us, in the past. Not just that, but we got lots of ghost stories that I always share with people. But like I said, nothing ever physical.
Right. So this is your first experience with something that can move stuff around and things like that.
Make noises like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Quite interesting. So Seth, you were doing a little bit of research on the various types of entities and things.
Well, getting into this, we had discussed the thing about it being a poltergeist, and I realized in there that I've really never taken the time to distinguish a poltergeist from a ghost from any of the other stuff, and so I thought maybe I better look up and see if there is a difference. And according to the sources I found, there is. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying these sources are, I don't know how accurate they are one way or the other, but the one that I'm getting ready to quote from fits with my experience. I sort of get what it's saying. I can swallow what they're saying. And the first thing they talk about is something called an interactive personality. And that's what we refer to as ghost. And these are of deceased people, someone you know, a family member, or maybe even a historical figure, it says. They can be friendly or not. They can be angry little ghosts. They show themselves in a variety of ways. They can become visible. They can speak. They can make noises. They can touch you. A lot of times they emit odors like perfume and smoke, and I've experienced that. I've smelled perfume. I've also smelled cigar smoke and different things like that. Experts say, and I don't know who these experts are, they retain their former personality when they're alive and they can feel emotions. And they often come to you visiting to comfort you and let you know something important. I've also experienced situations where these ghosts come to me for advice, wanting to know how to move on or wanting favors. I mean, I've had to run a couple of them off because they were still trying to play the game after death that they played in their life, type of deal. But they're not harmful. They're when they touch you, they don't harm you. Maybe you can feel their hand on your back, or maybe playing with your hair, or sometimes people feel like they're being embraced, or they can feel the ghost sweep through them. So they're not harmful. They're the ones that a lot of times you don't necessarily, when you're doing house cleanse, you don't necessarily want to run them off, because they're a lot of times they're there to protect you or to guide you, and they come a lot of times in times of need. Which sounds like what the angel that your ex-husband was more of a ghost or an angelic type being. So a benevolent thing.
Well, I will say that with this whole thing going on, I don't feel threatened. Now, my oldest son did, that one night, but I don't feel like anything is here that is harmful or anything. So what he felt the other night is not something that I've been feeling at all with all this happening.
Well, poltergeist, I'm sorry, Faye, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's been my experience, for what it's worth, that I have had kind of multiple entities that would be in a place. It seems like if you get one, you get a set, And so I had the blue apartment I used to live in, and sometimes it was so peaceful there that I would have people walk in the door and they'd be like dozing out on the couch within 5 minutes. And then there were other times where, like what your son was talking about, where I'd be basically kicked out of my own apartment because the energy in the place was so bad and so negative that I just was like, yeah, I can't stay here, and I'd have to leave.
I agree. They do seem to come in pairs, and it's almost like I can't even say that they have a good and evil pair, because but they do seem to come in pairs, or more, one anyway.
Well, it sounds like we're talking about poltergeist at this point. And the actual term comes from the word polter, which is like, I think these are German words. Polter meaning noisy, and geist meaning ghost, which means they're a noisy ghost. They're very active. They have the ability to move things and knock things around and make noise and manipulate the physical environment. They typically don't do anything really mean to you. They can startle you, like having loud knocking or whatever, but they don't really do anything like
malicious.
Yeah, they're not supposed to. Although it says they have been known to actually become dangerous. Some experts explain as a massive form that a living person is controlling unknowingly. I don't know what that's about. But they can do things like actually pinch you, or you feel like you're being bitten by them. But they're not the ones that do the really brutal type stuff. They're just like an annoyance.
See, I asked Jen the other day about her sons, because one of the things that I've heard is that typically if you have a child that's undergoing, issues, you may not be aware of it on the surface, but if they're unhappy for whatever reason, that often either their it's their energy that's going out and displaying because they don't feel comfortable
It
to display their
manifests into
right.
something.
Yeah, it's like either it's their own psychic energies that are causing it, or potentially that it's an entity that comes in there and taps into the child's energy and is utilizing that. And there are supposed cases where poltergeists can throw things and move things, violently and stuff, and so there is a potential of them becoming violent. But as a rule, I think it's usually they kind of sneak up on you and go booga booga, and get an energy rush from that. Has been my experience.
Well, I had a situation years ago that I had a little apartment, and I think I've told the story on our podcast before, but it was like they'd made a little efficient or 1-bedroom apartment in the back of this old house. And I knew that there was like ghosties in this house. I mean, the people knew it and it wasn't a big deal. They weren't scary. But I had come in and set a plate down in the middle of a table. And I turned around in the corner of my eye. I saw that plate fling itself to the middle of my floor and break. And in my mind, it was a little old grandma that had done this. She was annoyed because my housekeeping skills are not great. And so she flung the plate. And I got mad and I told her, I'm like, if you're upset about it, wash the damn dishes. Don't be breaking them. If you can move stuff, wash my dishes or get out. She calmed down. But I was able to really sort of get an impression. And I don't guess a lot of people do that. So I just assumed it was a ghost. But by what I'm reading, it feels more like a poltergeist type of thing.
Well, it touched me. I think it's touched me a couple of times, and I couldn't tell on my shoulder if it's my hair or if it keeps coming up and doing this. But there was one day I was doing this all day long. I was like, walking around the house and doing it. And then the other night, I was playing with the dog in my son's room, and I felt like something came up and did that on my butt. And I turned around and I said to Grant, and I said, what? And he's like, what? I said, why'd you smack my butt? And he's like, I didn't. So anyway, so I think it's done that a few times, but that's one of those things that you're kind of like, are you crazy, or is it hair, or whatever.
Now, poltergeist may be something that you want to try to get rid of if they start creating havoc. Mm-hmm. If they're playful, it's up to you if you want to keep them around as like pets. I hate to use that word, but like little entities that you're kind of having fun with. But when they start becoming destructive, it's time for them to go.
See, to me, frankly, the negative feeling, up till then, the moving things and seeing stuff, that to me is not that critical. But when you start getting something where it's, throwing you out of the room or starting to get that very dark feel, that's where, in my mind, the alarm bells go off and it's like, okay, time to nip this in the bud. Because my experience with that is that once you get that form of energy coming in, that it doesn't tend to get better on its own.
Yeah. And I mean, and I know also that with the poltergeist that you can, it can be all fun and games for a little bit, and then it starts attaching itself to your energy, so it's harder and harder to get rid of it as it goes along, and so it might be a thing that you need to get rid of it sooner than later so that it's not harder, because it, like y'all said, it might decide to throw a plate across the room next time or something, and not get, or lose its temper and do a little temper tantrum or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
You have a strange look on your face, Seth.
Well, I'm reading. I'm trying to find. There was one of these things I was looking at that talked about oftentimes. I can't remember if it's ghosts or if it's poltergeists that tend to attach themselves, and I don't mean that physically, but they tend to bond with like one person. And I think it's poltergeist.
Yes.
where they will move with you. They will become your buddy, and they will move with you from one place to the next. I'm not sure about ghosts, but that was one of the things that I was reading about.
I've kind of heard that, I've heard both, actually. I mean, I've heard that, if you have a ghost that's very attached, that it's going to follow potentially. But I also think if you have a poltergeist that's attached to someone's energy, that's going to go too, because I think that, we become food sources in part for them, because again, that little booga booga, your initial fear response to that, I believe, gives such a good burst of energy that it's like, dinner is served. Yum. And so they're not going to want to, give up their little drive-through dining area either.
Here's an interesting quote.
Mm-hmm.
This is from bustle.com. And this is a quote, it's in quotations. Poltergeists are not angry spirits seeking retribution, but psychic disturbances surrounding an unhappy person, often a teenager.
Yeah.
Some experts explain it is a mass form of energy that a living person is controlling unknowingly. For this reason, poltergeists are known to follow energy or a person, rather than occupying a particular space like a ghost does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it says teenagers have an extra strong emotions. And so, adolescence and puberty. Thanks, hormones, is what it says. Thanks, hormones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have to say, with my 18-year-old, we've had a little bit of drama going on, and being in quarantine and everybody's being in the house 24/7. He has had some, have his emotions kind of doing, weird things and stuff with, drama with girlfriend and being home and not having his job right now and those types of things and not going to school. And he's supposed to graduate this year. So he's high on emotion right now. So if, maybe it is attached to him.
See, I wonder,
it's presenting itself.
I wonder about that. I kind of wonder about that based on, I mean, again, there's a chance there's multiple sources of stuff going on, but you guys did that seance. How many months ago was that? About 3, 4, maybe?
I think we did in February, didn't we?
I have a problem with time. I can't tell the difference between a week ago and a year ago. Yeah. So February sounds good.
I think it's February.
But kind of based on what we got off of that, I wasn't there, just so as people know, but I was able to,
you were in spirit,
so to speak. Whatever. Anyway, I did take the unedited, tape that you guys made and went through that. And based on some of the stuff that came out of that, it makes me wonder if it's not also potentially, something that could be following you, Jen. It's really hard to say. And again, my sense is almost like when a portal opens around a person, whether it be, you, the kids, whatever, then I think, that things sense that portal briefly and then zoom through there. I've been told that some people, it's almost as if on the other side, it's very, like if you imagine like a black field, but every once in a while there's a brilliant light that'll shine into this field and the entities see that and are attracted to it. And that's why I think some people get, follows, they get, attachments and stuff like that. So it may be that your energy shows up over there very brightly. I don't know for sure, but it certainly is a theory. But there was some definite stuff in that seance that made me believe that some of this is potentially attached to you. And Again, it's very hard though to make it an official thing. I mean, it's highly possible if you've got
Oh,
the
I
kind
have
of
no doubt she's got stuff attached to her.
right.
I have no doubt about that.
Okay.
I don't see anything attached to me.
Yeah. But wait till you see the video. It's right behind you.
It's like got a gum stuck to my shoe. So
Yeah. The thing that you were talking about, where that one day you were doing this all day, one of the things that they talk about is feeling like you have spider webs or something kind of on you, and that typically is associated with ghostly activities and stuff. And so when you're describing that's very much the type of thing that where it'll feel like you're walking through something, but there's nothing, and yet you feel it. So, Seth, you were also looking up things on demonic, just to.
Yeah, but before we get to demons, I want to talk about angels for a minute because
Okay.
really, we'll get to demons here in a minute. But there's a reason I want to lead in with angels, and the first thing is, I'm not talking about fluffy angels. I'm not talking about the little cherubs that we all go and buy at the store, and those little tiny cute things. But angels are considered messengers, and they come to us from a higher power, a higher place. Sometimes, my understanding is sometimes they're of our own higher self. Sometimes they're connected to the God source. Sometimes, the Bible talks about them, but it goes through a lot of spiritual traditions. They call them different things, but they are messengers for us. And I work on the angelic plane when I'm doing readings. I have these I call them my guides that talk in my ear or give me visions or whatever the whole time. And I have to slow them down and have them give me the words. Those are helpers. What's interesting is as we get into demons, which I sort of had a problem with the concept of demons because I just don't think there's little things with pitchforks out there out to get me. Now, I know there's a lot of people that do, and I've encountered some major self-destructive behaviors that felt demonic, but I didn't see that as being something outside of myself doing things to me. It felt more like it has a lot to do with my addictions, things that were eating me alive from the inside out. But originally, according to this site again, demons were originally they're derived from the Greek word daimon, which means supernatural being or spirit. It had no necessarily association with evil. They were just other messengers. They were a different form than angelic. They were coming from a different place. But then, the Bible gets into demonic stuff, and that's where a lot of people come up with it. And I'm certain that there are really angry spirits that want to connect themselves, but usually those spirits have to be invited in. We don't just walk through the park one day and suddenly are attacked by a demon and we're possessed, blah, 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 like the Linda Blair project or whatever. Typically it has to do with when we are in a place of profound emotion like grief or anger or addiction or basically those that we open ourselves up to wanting to feel better. And that energy originally is very seductive.
One of the observations I wanted to make is that at one point you were talking to Abraham, and that is one of the topics that I remember.
Abraham was an entity I used to channel, by the way. It was a guy that would come through me and chatter away while I rested, and Fey would have these intense conversations, and I would listen to the tape later and find out what I learned.
Yeah, exactly.
I was always the last to know.
I do remember him talking during those sessions about possession, and that it really was something where somebody was willing to give up their control in order to not have to deal with their situation in that moment, and so they were perfectly willing to hand over the power, the energy, the whatever, and kind of step out of things at that time, and then the problem is of course when they want to come back, well, in theory that's not as easy, but I think that's also because once you're freed of all the burdens, why would you want to come back, really?
I
And
also
so
remember something about a traumatic event when we got to talking about multiple personalities and how that those were entities coming in to help the body survive through the lesson. They were all like getting their lessons through that one body, even if the initial personality was gone. Other things. It was really an interesting time that we went through with all that. It explained multiple personalities and all kinds of stuff to us.
Yeah, well, it was very fascinating. So the for me, I also am kind of like never sure how I really feel about demons. I'm not sure if I really think that the little pitchfork guy, little red tail and all that's running around. Having said that, I have most certainly run into some things that were absolutely opposed to my energy, and I don't know if it's just entities that are vibrating on a different energy level than us, and it's such a difference in the energies that they just come across to us as being negative, and maybe they think of themselves as little rays of sunshine in their world, but for whatever reason, that combo of our energy and their energy is toxic as hell. One of the weird things, I was talking with you earlier about Ed and Lorraine Warren, because they did a lot of work with demons and haunted places and possessed places. And, a lot of times they'll say that, like, oh, this doll is possessed or whatever, like Annabelle as an example, the rag doll. But the one thing that I think is strangely ironic is that someplace, I don't remember, I guess somebody gave it to me. I had a book on demonology that was by the Warrens, and I was like, oh,
so you possessed a book about possession?
Yeah, and it was possessed.
Wah, 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 wah.
Yeah, okay, that works. But the weird thing about this book is that it was like I found it to be completely unreadable, because anytime I would open it out, there would be this really cloyingly sweet perfume smell that would come out of it. And it was so sweet and so cloying that it would actually make me feel sick. And it's like this book, I had the book for probably 8 or 9 years, and the smell never left this book. And I would never smell it until I opened the book out. And then it was like this cloud of this really just nasty smelling stuff. And I just think it's kind of funny, because when I would make the mistake of opening that book thinking, oh, I'll bet that smell's cleared out of it by now, invariably that's when I would get an uptick in negative activities around the place that I live. And so that was kind of a weird thing, that the Ed and Lorraine Warren book, as far as I could tell, was possessed by, I don't know, a demon. So that was really kind of weird. Really kind of strange.
My sense is about all this stuff is it's about making ourselves available to being able to see ghosts, to being able to see spirits, but that can also be very malevolent. I mean, if you're making yourself available to that type of energy. I tend to stay away from a lot of the lower forms of energy. Like Ouija boards don't work for me. They'll maybe move, but they don't make any sense. But I've been with other people where they were able to get them to go and make sense, and they were really interesting. I'm not scared of a Ouija board. I don't think it releases Satan, but they've just never really worked for me. On the other hand, I used to do automatic writing, so
Let me ask you this. If somebody, when you do talk about demon possessions or demonic spirits and stuff, the scratches, that's the thing that I'm always, that's associated
Physical
with
on the
demonic. Yeah, where you get scratches on your skin where, you just feel the sharp, you see it in ghost hunter things type
been there,
things.
lived it.
And also, um, you usually associate that with demonic. I mean, what are y'all's thoughts about that kind of thing?
I think it may be poltergeist. I mean, it may be demon. I don't really know. I guess it would probably depend on the situation the person's in. I'm not sure one size fits all on this.
I I went through a period where that was happening to me, but it was before I knew anything about this. And I had a person that I was living with, and I was getting scratches in threes on the back of my back. And I can remember like walking around, and I guess I had a towel wrapped around me, but my upper back was showing. And this person was like, "Oh my God, what happened to you?" And it was like, "I don't know." And then after that was brought to my attention, it started, it was like it kept happening where I'd get scratches just sort of over and over and over again. And they were always in threes and stuff like that. Um, Again, I don't know that if I think that is a demonic thing per se. I definitely think it's a lower energy and a negative energy. The thing that was in my blue apartment was very, very dangerously destructive, in my opinion. One of the things, and this is just an off issue rant, sort of, but one of the things that always bothers me is people talking about how, oh, cats will protect you from negative energy. Cats are there to protect you, and so people will get cats if they're in a haunted place, thinking, okay, now I'm safe. Bullshit. I had a cat that lived there. The cat was sensitive to what was going on. I remember I left my apartment one day and I came back and the cat's arm had been twisted up out of its socket and it was never able to walk again properly. It stayed limping. And that cat got attacked on several occasions. Now, I had never gotten the cat as a protection. I just like cats. But I've seen cats suffer extreme damage. And so I hate the idea that people are like, oh, if I get this cat, it will protect me. No, cats
Well,
are sensitive to things.
cats
They,
absorb psychic attack, whether it be on a ghost level or other level. They absorb it for us.
yeah, but
But it's not a romantic thing. It's not a, oh, isn't that cute? The cat, No, they
no,
they take the brunt of the pain. They catch the pain.
yeah. And like I said, this thing's arm was completely twisted out of socket, like somebody had just grabbed it and just wrenched it completely out. And I remember the cat being just in an absolute panic. So that's kind of an off issue rant. Sorry about that. But I think that also goes along with scratching and stuff because it's like if that's something that's reaching out, touching you and causing damage, then if you have an animal, you're running pretty good odds that that animal is also in danger of being hurt. And that's a thing that I find bothersome. And I wish that idea that they can protect you would like dissipate because you're putting them in as much danger as you're in those situations. At least to me, you are.
We're possessed. Blah, blah, blah.